And welcome to our deep dive section into magnetics and other solar features, things like coronal holes and indeed sunspots. We just saw the arrival of the high-speed portion of a coronal hole wind stream. Here's 4 hours of data of Earth's magnetic moment from space. The Space Weather Modeling Framework, Geospace Magnetosphere movie. We did see the solar wind get up all the way to over 60 protons per cubic centimeter. We'll get to it in a moment. As this high-speed coronal hole wind stream finally shows up in the high-speed portion, we saw a significant density spike here. Next, looking at the plasma sheet, the heliospheric current sheet. We are expecting the arrival of a South Pole current sheet soon, so don't be surprised to see this red portion speed toward Earth. That's a little forecast for the magnetics of the heliospheric region. Here's the GOES magnetometer over the past 3 days, and we are seeing some sawtooth patterns. Expect to see some continued sawtooth patterns in the GOES magnetometer here as the high-speed portion of this coronal hole wind stream arrives. We don't see the really high portion yet. It's only a minor uptick. Next, the line of sight ecliptic plane field plot. Again, expect a South Pole current sheet to be showing up soon. Next, the north hemisphere of the sun, the northern hemisphere, the part north of the equator, folks, is riddled with North Pole-oriented coronal holes, as you can see there. The main feature associated with solar polar field reversal cycles. This also shows the solar B field, the field that goes through the magnet, in blue. So here's a visualization of that in 193 angstroms. Probably the best wavelength to show coronal holes from the SDO. And you can see another significant one here, pretty well defined, rotating into the Earth-facing zone. Probably about 4 days out before we receive any significant density spike in the solar wind from that coronal hole. Next, we'll move on to sunspots. This one down here is quite stable here. We've got a new group forming. That's a beta-class sunspot group, so we could see flares from that. And this group here is even larger, similarly complex in its magnetic field structure. Both sunspot groups in the northern hemisphere are beta-class sunspots. We're unlikely to see any significant flares from this sunspot 2934. 2935 and 2936. I think we misnamed that yesterday. We were expecting this one to be 2935, but this one got a name first. For whatever reason, sunspots need to be on the Earth-facing portion of the disk for 12 hours before they get a name, I believe. And so with this new sunspot group here, these two new beta-class sunspot groups in the northern hemisphere, we are more likely to see significant solar flares. And we have seen some C-class flares. 2 significant C-class flares there in the past 3 days. So a little bit of an uptick there in solar X-ray activity, sunspot production, and the radio flux, which we covered in our previous video. Check that out if you haven't seen it. We've been putting out 3 daily space weather videos per day because we wanted to put them in smaller, more digestible chunks, and because of things like algorithms and so on, rather than putting out one lengthier video. So no spikes in the proton flux here, no relativistic particles at Earth yet. And let's look at the real-time solar wind. So we saw this big density spike here. We saw the solar wind density make it all the way up to over 65 protons per cubic centimeter. Now we see that dropping down, the characteristic signature happening right now that we typically see with coronal hole high-speed streams. So we could see this one get pretty fast here. Current conditions are about 10 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density, solar wind speed. Only minor uptick here to 374 kilometers per second. You can see the plasma temperature has risen as well. So that's the leading edge of the high-speed portion of the coronal hole wind stream. Don't be surprised to see the solar wind speed go much higher than this in the coming hours. Here's the KP index as a measurement of global geomagnetism. KP at 3. So we are expecting some geomagnetic unrest from this, I would venture to say. Next, Earth magnetic moment from the ground, since we showed you Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here it is from the ground. the geospace magnetosphere movie showing ground magnetic perturbations, geospace delta B changes to Earth's B field. So we are seeing some likely aurora here over southern Alaska, southern Canada. And here's a little astrography for you, showing you the locations of heavenly bodies in the solar system. We'll advance this 1 week to show you the arrival of the new moon for all you reverse werewolves out there who sleep well at night, don't consume humans, and are productive members of society during your diurnal existence in the daytime. Here's where things will be in a 1 week. We'll be saying Happy New Moon on February 1st. Next, a star chart. Some more astrography. This is where stuff is above my head. If you're up before dawn, you might see Mars, Venus, and Mercury rising ahead of the sun. I believe that's Mercury there. Indeed it is. If you've got a very low horizon, you may see Mercury. We use in-the-sky. This is the all-sky chart. Next, we're going to show you some minor coronal mass ejections happening here. They don't appear to be earthly oriented, so we're going to show you the view here from Lagrange point 1 and Lagrange point 5, the location of stereo A, which is here on your left. On your right is the LASCO SOHO C3 coronagraph. And you can see coronal mass ejections here coming out of the northern portion of the Earth-facing part of the solar disk here. Earth would be off in this direction from stereo A and behind you from the LASCO C3. No earthly coronal mass ejections at the moment. We'll keep you posted if anything changes when it comes to that, so stay tuned to the channel. Another space weather video premiering soon after this one. Make sure you check that out if you haven't. Also, please visit the links and support the channel. You can find links below the video, so click on those, pick up some merch like Mensa. Make Earth not suck again, it's up to you. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists, and I've been your host, Dan, aka Smash-A-Mash, signing off from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news.